Without a real prospecting plan, you are gambling with your chance of success in this industry. A lot of agents really struggle with how do you actually build a sales plan. This comes back to prospecting, aka how do you generate leads. I'm going to be talking about a plan all the way from start to finish. I'm going to be talking about different aspects of that plan, and I'm hoping that you're going to be able to walk away with a very easy to understand strategy that you can employ in your business to start seeing results as soon as possible. And by the way, if we haven't met before, my name is Slav. I run a team of over 30 agents. I've been a high producing agent, and I've trained hundreds of real estate professionals. Now, the first thing I want to talk about are all of the different ways that you can possibly prospect when it comes to real estate. So let's get into it. Now, as you can see, I've got a lot of prospecting strategies on this screen right here. We're not going to be talking about every single one of them because there's a million. And by no means are these the only strategies that you can employ in your business, because there are countless ways to generate leads. Some agents get very creative. But what I have here is a list of some of the most common ones. I'm going to dive into just a couple here as examples. So first of all, open houses. I think we're all familiar with open houses. You go to a house, you sit there for a couple hours, people come in, you try to convert them into leads. I do have a separate video on this, on the strategies that you can use for open houses. If you want to check it out, the link is down in the description. Moving on. So you are going to have a lot of different options here. So we've got open houses, we've got door knocking, we've got targeted online ads. What I'm going to be recommending is that you do not try to do every single one of these, because it's just simply too much. You can't do all of these things, and you shouldn't do all of these things. What you need to do is you need to pick a handful of options, and I'm going to walk you through what you do with those once you pick them, and you need to get really good at them. You need to put a lot of time and energy and resources into them so that you can see if they work for you. So for example, let's say that you are a brand new agent, you're not sure how to go. So let's just get rid of this here that I've highlighted so far. You're going to be picking three. First, you're going to be picking your primary. So the primary might be, let's say that you want to do door knocking. You feel very comfortable going door to door. This is something that I did quite a bit when I first started. Not the easiest thing in the world, but I promise you it does work as long as you stick with it. So we're going to choose door knocking as one option. We're also going to be choosing, why don't we say, cold calling. So we're going to be doing some cold calling as well. And then maybe I like to put on local events. I like to meet people in that way. So these are the three that I'm going to be picking. Now, I do want to talk about two specific strategies here that are going to be a little bit different than everything else. So I'm going to highlight them here: social media and sphere of influence. The reason I have these highlighted is that there are some exceptions when it comes to these strategies, and you should be doing these no matter what your primary and secondary prospecting strategies are. These are, sometimes you can really double down on these and make them one of your primaries, but a lot of the time they're going to be kind of an extension of your entire business plan. All right, now that you have your three strategies picked, let's move on to the second stage here. This is what a lead generation plan is going to be looking like. All right, so here's what we're going to do. So our number one is going to be door knocking. All right, so there it is. That's our number one strategy. What I'm going to recommend is that you focus most of your efforts on your number one strategy, and you need to get really, really good at it. So here we're going to put primary, because this is where all of our time is going to be going. And I'm going to say that we want to do this for probably 10 to 20 hours a week. We need to be prospecting a significant amount. One of the things that's very key for people to understand is that prospecting is the lifeblood of your entire business. If you don't prospect, nothing happens. If you watch any of those TV shows like Selling Sunset or $1 Million Listing, it looks really cool. It looks like all they do is just go out, show homes, and sell really cool, expensive houses. It's not how it works in real life. You have to go out, you have to find people first. If you don't find people, there is no business. So we're going to be doing ideally 10 to 20 hours a week of our primary strategy. All right, our secondary strategy is going to be cold calling. So we're going to put cold calling right there. And our third strategy is local events. Put it under 3. Now, both of these combined, we're probably going to be doing 5 to 10 hours a week. So we're not going to be going too crazy. We're going to be spending on both of those about 5 to 10 hours a week. So what this really looks like in the end is you're pouring the vast majority of your time into your primary strategy, but you have 2 additional auxiliary strategies on the go. The reason this is really important is, number one, you do need a little bit of variety, because it can get really boring. If all you're doing is door knocking every single day for hours at a time, you might just say, this is not fun. I don't want to do this. Because door knocking in itself is not the most exciting thing, but it does work. So you're going to mix it up. You're going to have some options to meet people in different ways. You're going to hopefully be putting some slightly different skills to use. And you never know. Maybe these other two will be more successful and you may end up pivoting. So this is a very important thing to understand, is you may not stick with 1, 2, or even 3 of these prospecting strategies. You may end up switching them out. It's possible you may switch out 1, you may switch out all 3, because it's going to be very critical that you learn what you want to do and what you don't want to do. But when I say this, I'm not saying that if you don't if you don't 100% enjoy every minute of your prospecting, you shouldn't do it. But by no means am I saying that. But if you hate it and you simply aren't willing to do it, well, that's not going to work for you. And we're going to have to find something else. So we do have to be realistic. I'm going to talk on these points in a little bit. All right, so up next, what we're going to do is talk about the 2 very special methods that I previously mentioned. Let's start it off with social media. Everyone should be doing this. But I want to make it very clear. I'm not saying that social media is going to carry your business if you're posting once or twice a week, you hanging out with your dog or you doing stuff. It can be one of your primary strategies, but you have to pour a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of energy into it. Social media works, okay? But it's not as easy as some people make it out to be. Social media is a lot of work if you want to do it as one of your core lead generation principles. What I'm recommending here is, if this isn't something that you want to tackle every day on an hourly basis, because it is quite a bit of work, you should at least have this as an extension of your resume. Think of it like somebody searching you up online. It used to be that people would want to see your resume, but nowadays a lot of people want to see, what are you up to? What are you doing on Instagram? Do you have sales on there? Are you showing that you're selling homes? Are you showing that you're a professional that can be trusted? So everybody should be doing this. This is like an extension of your resume, and this should be a weekly plan regardless of how serious you are about social media. The second one I want to talk about here specifically is sphere of influence. This is another one that everybody should be doing, because everybody knows somebody. These could be friends, these could be family, these could be past coworkers, these could be people that are part of the same church, part of the same club. These could be just people that you randomly meet. So everybody should be doing sphere of influence to a certain extent, but sphere of influence is usually not enough to carry your business from 0 to 100. And I think a lot of agents really get this wrong, where they think that they can just rely on their sphere of influence. I would say that 1 out of every, maybe about 100 or so agents can rely on just their sphere of influence, because they happen to know a lot of people. Those people trust them, and those people just want to work with them. For most agents, most likely you, statistically you, I know I was included in this statistic, can't do that. You can't work off of just sphere of influence. It just isn't going to be enough. You're going to get some deals, but in most cases, you're not going to get enough to actually run a business. So we are going to be working our sphere of influence, and everybody needs to be working on this. So this is going to be friends, past colleagues, we'll call them coworkers, and whoever else that you know, basically club, etc. Club members, other people, whatever it is. And you should be reaching out to people, letting them know that you're in real estate, but don't be annoying about it, right? Don't call your one buddy 15 times asking, hey, do you know anybody who wants to buy a house? They're going to start not picking up the phone, and you're going to burn some relationships. So you want to do this, but you don't want to be annoying, and you do want to be strategic about this. All right, the reason that I have a star down here is there's one more thing you want to talk about, and this is going to be team leads. If you happen to be on a team that provides you with a very large volume of leads, that may be all that you need. I know that I'm talking about the 3 setup where you have 3 specific prospecting strategies. If you're on a large team and you're getting a ton of leads, you may not need 3, because you're probably going to have more than you can actually handle. I know this because I run a team of over 30 agents, and we do generate thousands of leads every single month, and we distribute those to the agents. And a lot of those agents don't have the time to really pursue anything else because they have so many opportunities there. Not every team is going to have a ton of leads. So if you are somebody who's looking to join a team, make sure you do your research and you find out, what are you actually getting? How many leads are you getting? And will that be enough to support your business? In some cases, you may need to have 3 strategies because the team leads simply aren't going to be enough. So that's something that you need to consider. Just wanted to do a quick little bonus tip on that. All right, so now that we've picked the strategies. And now that we understand how social media and all of those things play a role, let's talk about the keys to success. This is going to be very important here. And I want to start it off by talking about setting a schedule. So first here, we're going to put set a schedule. Without a schedule, nothing happens. I know this from experience. It's very easy for us to think, okay, I've done these things, now they're just going to happen. Well, you have to work really hard and you have to work at keeping yourself accountable. Remember, you're in real estate now. There's nobody who's going to be looking over your shoulder and saying, hey, did you work from 9 to 5 today? What did you do? We're not going to pay you if you're not working. You're simply not going to make money, but you can also very easily convince yourself that you are working. And a lot of agents do this by fiddling around with their business cards or going on Facebook or going on Instagram and doing research. You do need to do some research if you're doing social media, but research is not 3 hours of scrolling looking at cat memes. I promise you that's not going to help you grow your business. So we need to set a schedule and we need to be realistic. How many hours a day are you prospecting? Which time blocks specifically are you going to be prospecting? You have to block those times. So we're going to put here time blocking. Super critical. Before the day starts, you should have a schedule already for all the things you're going to do. So maybe 9 to 10, you're going to be doing door knocking. 10 to 11, you're doing cold calling. Then from 2 to 3, you have an event. Whatever it happens to be, the more things you time block and the more you stick with them, the more success you're going to get. Very important that you check in with yourself. So do check-ins and ask yourself, am I sticking to my schedule? Because you'll find a lot of the time you're falling off the wagon and you got to pick yourself up. You got to get back on. All right, the second thing we're going to be talking about here is tracking your numbers. Because if you don't know what kind of success you're seeing, and you don't actually know how many leads you're getting, how much time you're spending, if you don't know these things, it's very difficult to gauge if something's working well for you or if you need to pivot away from it. So here we're going to say you need to track your hours, how many hours you're putting in. You need to track how many leads you're getting. And what is a lead? A lead is somebody whose contact information you collect. If you have a good conversation, it goes super well. They say, hey, we want to work with you, but you can't get in touch with them. That's not a lead. Probably nothing's going to happen then. So we need numbers and we need emails. If you track all these things on a weekly or monthly basis, and then take a look at how is this actually translating into business, you're going to be able to ascertain whether you should continue with this prospecting method or if you should maybe go to something else. All right, the third one here is we need to have a clear workflow. This is super critical. And when I'm talking about a workflow, I'm talking from start to finish. Let's say that you're doing cold calling. All right, you get somebody on the phone. Hopefully you've been practicing your scripts. Hopefully you have something good that you can say and that you can carry a conversation, you can provide value, and you can essentially open up that person to working with you. Once we do that, we need to know, what are we actually doing? So we have their number, we've got their name, maybe we've got their email. What do we do with these pieces of information? Well, number one, we need to have a reminder. So put everything into a CRM. If you don't have a CRM, get one. It is super critical. It is one of the most undervalued things that you can use in real estate to help you grow your business long term. So everybody goes in the CRM. So you're putting in a reminder because otherwise you're going to forget about the lead. If you just have people's names and numbers, but you don't have a way to follow up with them consistently, you're not going to do deals. All right. Then we need to make sure that we have a drip going to that person. If we have their email, let's send them an automated drip once a week, once a month, whatever you think is going to work out very well. From there, we need to start doing follow-ups because realistically, most people aren't going to be buying a home the moment that you speak with them. Some people might take 3 months. Some people might take 6 months. I've had people take 2 to 3 years, but you bet I still want that business. I don't care if somebody's going to take 2 or 3 years to do business with me. I need business today and I need business in the future. So I'm going to pursue that business and I'm going to make sure that it stays with me. Once all of this is very clear as to what we're doing with our workflow, how are we following up, what's the system, how do we make sure nothing falls through the cracks, that's when our lead generation system is going to really start taking off. The key to understand here is that this isn't going to happen overnight. You might talk to 10 good leads in the course of the first month, but none of them might close in the first month. So you're going to have the system, otherwise it doesn't work. All right, so here I'm going to put CRM. I'm going to put follow-ups. And I'm going to put reminders so that you don't forget about leads. The final thing I want to talk about is the pivoting. This is important. Sometimes you're going to have to pivot. This is why you have 3 core pillars of lead generation. If the first one isn't working for you, or you hate it and you're not willing to do it, you have to pivot. You got to go to something else. What's nice about this is that if you have 2 other ones, you can immediately pick one out and say, this is now my primary. And you go from working on it 5 to 10 hours a week to 10 to 20 hours a week. So it should be a very seamless transition and you should be able to pivot very easily. Sometimes what you've been doing may not work anymore. Maybe something's changed. Maybe the rules have changed. If we talk about some of the common prospecting strategies, expireds and terminateds comes to mind. Well, guess what? Not every single real estate board is going to allow you to do that. Where I live in Calgary, we're not allowed to prospect expireds and terminateds. We're not allowed to solicit them. If we call them, we can actually get reported and you could get in trouble with the governing body. What if you're in a place where they just implement that rule and that's where you were getting the majority of your deals from? Well, you have to pivot very quickly. And just knowing that you have something in your back pocket that you can move to that is going to work for you is going to make your life so much easier and you're going to have so much less stress. There's a few reasons why we might pivot, because maybe it just does not work anymore. That's something that's entirely possible. Maybe you just don't like what you're doing. Or maybe your schedule has changed and maybe you now need to take care of the kids at a different time of the day and what you were doing can't really be done at whatever time you now have available. There's many different reasons that you might need to pivot. These 4 super critical keys to success, keep them in mind and employ these as much as you can in your business. I'm not saying that this is the only thing, because the reality is the most important thing is you got to go out there and you got to do whatever it is that you said you're going to do. And if you don't, then none of this really matters. There's going to be a lot of other things that are going to be at play here, but these are very common things that I see agents struggle with. And so I'm highlighting them for you because I think that it can have a significant impact on your business. All right, lastly, I want to talk about what goes wrong. How is it that so many agents struggle to follow basic principles when it comes to prospecting? All right, so I'm going to highlight some of the most important ones here. First of all is going to be giving up too soon. The thing that you have to understand about real estate prospecting is that there's always a delay between you starting and you seeing success. And if you do something for a week and you don't sell any homes and you decide, yeah, that just doesn't work, you haven't given enough time. You have to give it enough time before you decide that something isn't work. I did talk about pivoting and it is critical, but you can't pivot too soon. So I'll give you some examples. When I first got into this industry, I did quite a bit of door knocking. And in my first month of door knocking, I didn't sell any houses. I did collect names. I did collect phone numbers. And some of those people later on turned into transactions. But it took me a while to really get the ball going. And there's a few things that were working against me. Number one, most people, when you first talk to them, are not going to be ready to transact right in that moment. They might be willing to transact in 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is. So you have to give it long enough that you can actually confirm whether these people are just waiting or if you simply just aren't generating good enough leads and that you can't convert any of them. So what is a good length of time to do something before you decide that it just doesn't work and you don't want to do it anymore? Well, let's say at a minimum, it has to be 3 months at a minimum. Some of these strategies like geofarming can take years before you see meaningful results. You might do geofarming for 6 months and see 0 results, but your presence in that community is building and you are sowing the seeds for success down the road. Are you willing to wait that long though? And that's a question you have to ask yourself. If you need immediate results, you're probably going to want to use strategies that are going to be a little bit quicker. So geofarming isn't something I'd focus on if I needed something super quick, but it could be your backup strategy. It could be your secondary. And maybe your first one is something that is a lot more likely to put money in your pocket over the next few months. So at a minimum, give something 3 months and you have to be consistent with it. That's the other thing that I'm going to highlight here is inconsistent input. Let's say that you decide that you're going to do cold calling and you cold call once in the first week, maybe a couple times in the second week, then you don't do it for another few weeks. And then eventually you're like, it doesn't work. Well, you didn't really give it a fair shake. You didn't really make yourself consistent enough and you simply didn't put in enough effort. Even if over the course of 3 to 6 months, you're not seeing success, well, are you only doing it once every few weeks? Because that's not going to lead to success. You have to be very consistent. You have to be very dialed in. You have to do enough numbers every single week that it makes sense that you have the chance of finding somebody who's going to buy or sell with you. The third one here is lack of training. Now, you have to get really good at whatever you're doing. It's one thing to do something consistently, but it's another thing to do that thing well. Imagine that you go out for bike rides every single day, but for some reason, you just you refuse to use the brakes and you never learn how to use the brakes, well, you're not going to be very good on the bicycle. You're going to get into a lot of crashes and you're going to think, what the hell? Why are all these people riding bikes? People say it's so great, but all I'm doing is getting hurt. And the reason is you haven't properly learned to do what you need to do. So you have to get good at your conversations. You have to get good at managing the CRM. You have to get good at every single thing that is involved in whatever prospecting method that you decide. All right, the last one here is bad advice, and this is a big one. Bad advice kills. And sometimes it's not so much a matter of bad advice as it is too much advice. So let's say that you start doing something. Let's say that you start hosting events. And you do it for a week, you don't see any results. And then you go to one of your friends who is also a realtor, you haven't seen any success, and you tell them that, and they say, oh, events suck, they don't work, you shouldn't be doing that. And then you think, oh man, yeah, I guess I should. Maybe I should just quit. And then you choose something else. But then what happens? Maybe you try door knocking, and then somebody tells you door knocking, that worked back in the 80s. Don't waste your time on that. Now you give up on that as well. So you have to ask yourself, who am I getting this advice from? Has this person done this thing? Are they qualified to be giving this advice? Should I listen to this person? The reality is that if you take 100 agents, you sit them all into a room, the answers you're going to get for what works and what doesn't work are going to be so drastically different that you're not going to know who to listen to. So the only way is for you to give it long enough time. Avoid people who are telling you that something doesn't work when there is plenty of evidence online that it does. If you look into door knocking, you will find a lot of evidence that it does work. But at the same time, a lot of people will tell you it's a waste of time and you shouldn't do it. It used to work back in the day. Social media does work, but it's not a magical pill. And just because you don't see success with it over the first few months doesn't mean you should just give up, and doesn't mean that it doesn't work. It just means maybe you don't have the right strategy. So be very careful where you're getting your advice from. Now, I want to finish this up, and I just want to say this. You have to work, you have to have a good strategy, and you have to put in a lot of time and effort. This is a very competitive industry where 80 to 90% of people fail, and this is one of the main reasons that they fail, is they can't generate leads because they don't have a cohesive prospecting plan. If you can at least have this portion of your business down, your chance of success is probably 2 to 5 times higher compared to everybody else who hasn't done this sort of work.